most of us will do before we understand what it is that we are doing. So I really need to throw myself into the shape before I understand the concept, before I understand what is the meaning, before I understand what even the piece is.
Hello, my name is Eline Perez and you're listening to Are You an Artist? Today's episode is with Léa Tirabasso and it's about making dance works, instinct and critics. I admire Léa, who is very clever and inspiring, but also humble and funny, so I didn't feel too intimidated and I think this might be one of my favorite episodes of the podcast. Thank you, Léa, for your time, and to all the listeners, enjoy! Dear Léa, just a month ago I didn't know you, but while working at the place, I had a chance to see In the Bushes, and I was both surprised and deeply inspired by your work. I decided somehow on a whim to invite you on the podcast, thinking you'd probably be too busy to reply. But to my delight, not only did you respond, you accepted with such generosity and enthusiasm, and here we are. You're a dancer and choreographer with a background in history of art and modern literature. You have published a book, and you have your own podcast, The Art of Faux Pas, which I've really been enjoying. You've created so many works on themes I care about. I wish we had hours to dive into all of them. So let's begin simply. Léa, are you an artist?
Thank you. It's very moving words. Thank you so much. Well, I think it's probably the hardest question I've ever been asked. I for sure make things. I for sure need viscerally to create and need these creations to be shared with people. I make artifacts. Now, creating my own work has become my main source of income. Mm-hmm. So I guess I became a professional creator. But I always have this thing, and it's probably because of the French language.
Yes, right.
The word artist is such a word that's beyond any other vocabulary, any other names, that calling yourself an artist would be like calling yourself a god, right? It belongs to the realm of the superhuman, and somehow there's this tacit rule or understanding that one should never call themselves an artist, I guess. So I'm not sure I'm an artist. I don't know. But what I know is that I make things. And I love making things. But then also maybe we all are artists because we're all creators in in many different ways. So if I'm an artist, I think everyone is an artist.
And it's interesting because in French you can't say dance artist.
Yeah.
Like there is not a word for that.
Yeah, it's true.
So yeah, it makes it so huge. To say the word artist.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's a bit more flexible. Like you can be a visual artist, you can be a dance artist, multidisciplinary artist, and it's kind of more accepted maybe.
Yes, which is great.
Yeah.
But I think that to myself, I didn't come to the point where I would call myself an artist.
Yes. And what kind of child were you?
It's really interesting because my dad, so I have a 4-year-old daughter who's spicy and full of life and amazing. And he said to me the other day that I was very much like her when I was little.
Oh.
So playful and, full of energy and curiosity. I remember myself as a child much later in life, like when I was around maybe, I'd say around 10, I was very insecure, very, very insecure. Felt that I was very ugly and I was full of insecurity. I hated my body.
How old were you?
I think around 10.
10?
Yeah,
that's
10,
so
11,
young to
something
kind
like
of
that.
hate your body.
10, 11, maybe 12. I'm not sure, but I'd say past 10, I remember that. But I also remember that I was bored. I was bored. I don't know why. So I was constantly daydreaming and I was listening to music and I was learning the lyrics and I was dreaming of a life in Los Angeles. And I was just projecting myself into kind of crazy, busy life. which I guess I'm leading today in a way. But I remember a lot of boredom. I remember looking out the window, looking at a tree, having this very existential kind of like experience with the present moment. Yeah,
And when did you start to dance?
very early on, I'd say probably at 3, 4, when you can have your first ballet class. I liked it, but I think the moment I fell in love with it was because of the sound of pointe shoes on the floor.
Oh, wow.
And I still remember the place, and I still remember where I was and the stage. And there was this group of older dancers who were performing at the end of the year, show of the dance school. And I remember hearing the sound of the pointe shoes and loving that sound and wanting to become a dancer because of the sound that it was making on the floor.
Wow.
Yeah, and eventually moved away from pointe shoes and, found myself being bare feet. And yeah, so very early on. But I didn't know I could become a professional dancer before later in life. I didn't think that was an option.
Do you know why?
I think probably because, my dad studied fine arts and we would be walking around museums a lot. So we went to see a lot of visual arts. He was so fascinated by all the avant-garde and I was kind of like really admiring all that. So I'd say that our cultural family dates would be museums more than theaters. So we would never go to the theater unless it was through the school or the high school. And I think it's probably one of the films I watched that I realized that they were professional schools and you could train as a dancer. And then I was like, oh, wow, okay, I could do that. Yeah, I think.
And you grew up in Luxembourg?
No, I grew up in the east of France. So on the other side of Luxembourg, but in France, in Moselle, which is quite a gloomy part of France, very industrial. My whole family came from Italy because there's loads of factories and they were looking for people to work in the factories. So a lot of Italian people came to work in this huge steel factories. So that's where I grew up. But then I moved to Lyon when I was 16 to train.
Where did you train?
It was a sport études, kind of like you would split your time between...
I remember sport études.
between, in the morning you would go to your high school and in the afternoon you would train. I did that for 3 years. Yeah, and then I stayed in Lyon I think I lived in Lyon for 7 years in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you finished high school, what did you do?
Well, again, I didn't know how to become a professional dancer because I think I wasn't really aware of the different types of dance. I discovered contemporary dance because we had a workshop with a contemporary dance choreographer and I discovered dancing bare feet and that was a real revelation. And once I had taken off my ballet shoes or even jazz shoes, I was like, what? I need to feel the floor and I never put them back on. But I didn't know of all the schools in Europe. So I went to uni and I did a year of English and Spanish, which I really didn't like. And it wasn't the best year of my life. Just didn't know what I was doing. And then I went on to study history of art and modern literature. I think it was always this sort of agreement with my parents that, okay, you want to dance, but also just have something else in case.
Yes.
In case you decide of doing something else with your life. So I did that BA, which I loved. I loved my teachers. I love the things I learned. But I sort of like organized my timetable, my schedule at university in agreement with my teachers there who were so supportive. And I could just do half of the classes at uni and the rest I would go take classes in different schools in Lyon.
Oh, nice.
So I never was part of a conservatoire.
Yeah.
I wasn't accepted in the regional conservatoire. I was like, okay, I'll find another way. But I think in a way, I think I was never really an institution person. I think that never worked for me because even uni, I wasn't fully at uni. I wasn't fully in a training. I just did my own kind of like soup. So I would miss classes, but in agreement with the teachers, I would rework on them, go to libraries and study and train. So I did loads of Graham classes that I loved. I was really rigorous with my schedule and I was really working hard at uni. I was really like, I'm going to make everything work and everything was so intertwined. And yeah, it was 3 amazing years in terms of personal growth.
Yes. And I guess you meet so many different people as well.
Yeah.
Between like uni and your dance classes and going to different places.
Yeah, and I think as well you learn about different artists' paths, like so many different people creating things that come from so many different backgrounds and the way they understand their practice and whatever success meant to them or yeah, it was very, very interesting. It was eye and soul opening. And then I did 1 year at the place.
Okay.
It was a certificate of higher education. I think I did the last year of that program. And yeah, I stayed in London.
And do you know why London? How did you decide I'm going to go there and try? Or
Well, it was very funny. I was walking around in Lyon one night or evening with one of my best friends. And I was telling her, I want to go into training. I want to train fully and full-time as a dancer. I want to try it. I want to give it a go. And completely by chance, we bump into someone I had met years ago, a dancer, who was doing his BA at the place. And I go like, hey, how are you doing? And we were just talking about that with my friend. So I said to him, well, would you recommend the place because you're there now? And he was like, yeah, completely. You go for it. So I just applied. And it's the only school I applied to.
okay.
And I think also London, because London is London. Yeah, I think I've always very romanticized London.
How did you think it would be?
I don't know. I think I was just like, again, you think about the Clash and you think about, I don't know, the punk scene and the red bricks, and there was something so rough and raw and punk about London. And like, there's no other city I want to be. And I remember the first year I was living here, I had the feeling that I was living in a music video, you know? I was like, this is amazing. And I don't think this feeling ever left me, actually. I'm still walking around London listening to music thinking, wow. And I auditioned on an 8th of March. So I was like, yeah, International Women's Rights Day. It's incredible. You know, I was like, yeah.
That could be a movie.
yeah. And got into it. And it was still through letters. And so I did the audition and they said, well, if you receive an answer from us, you'll receive a letter with all the documents you'll have to send back. So 2-3 weeks later, when I received a very
Thick
letter, I was like,
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And do you remember your very first creation? And when you were like...
Oh my God, yes, I do. The one I want to forget about. I mean, I have so much love for the people who really trusted me and collaborated with me and, you know, believed in a vision, believed in an energy. Yeah, all these first attempts to create were just exercises. Also because I didn't do a BA in dance, I didn't study choreography. So all the things I've learned by doing and trying and testing and failing and trying again and observing and understanding what I love as well to watch. Yeah, so we were working with amazing musicians and we made work that we presented in the Fine Arts Museum in Lyon.
Wow.
It was really nice. It was a very interesting process, and there are friends who remained friends for, you know, a long time. Yeah, but I think that the first creation I did that I was like, oh my God, I love it, was when I was working in Germany and I worked with 3 incredible dancers who were also colleagues in the company I was working in. And we made this crazy piece called Simone's, and we had babies taped around our bodies and we had 9 gowns, and then we ended up sort of like pretending we were giving birth and then smashing the babies. It was all about like, we're enslaved to the species. It was all this Simone de Beauvoir kind of like feminism.
Oh, I think I saw it.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Is it Simone?
Yeah,
yes.
With an S at the end, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was so raw and so... The physicality, you know, I didn't work on the physicality, but it was very visual. And Laja, Brianna, and Masa were just incredible in just throwing themselves in it with me. So I think for me, that was the first time that I was not in the piece I was making and that I was so enjoying the creative process. Yeah.
Do you still dance now?
Well, I teach, so I guess I dance when I teach sometimes. I love to perform. I love to be on stage. It's my happy place, or one of my happy places. But I don't have the time anymore. And I think I got very, very picky with what I would do as a dancer. Yeah.
And do you think as a choreographer as well, that with time you got a bit more picky?
Oh,
and
yes.
A bit...
I'm so picky. I really think that the devil is in the details, and I'm so into the details and the way you look and where you look and when you look and what your hand is doing, and when you enter, wait another second, not 2 seconds, 1 second. It's all very detailed, but I think there's a common kind of like playfulness with my collaborators around this precision. There's also a lot of freedom in that sense, like the structure is set, but within that structure they can really play. But yes, I'm very picky. Like, for example, I do not like flex feet is like something I do not like. And so I'm always like, careful, your foot is flexed, flex foot, flex foot. It's like, it's just like stupid things that I just get very like obsessed with.
That's so interesting.
It's, yeah. So yes, I'm picky. I'm picky.
But also now I've seen that you've worked with some dancers for quite some time. Like they've been in like loads of your work. So how do you find working with them now? You can witness, I guess, their own journey and your journey as well. And
yeah, it's incredible because I really think that we are growing together as, well, artists, practitioners. We have a common understanding of things. We develop a common language in a way. We get much more efficient as well. We understand straight away where we want to go, how we want to get there. I think as well we have the same way of working in the sense that most of us will do before we understand what it is that we are doing. So I really need to throw myself into the shape before I understand what the concept, before I understand what is the meaning, before I understand what even the piece is. Of course, I know where I want to go and I have a feeling of where I want to go. But I think it's first we do, then we analyze what we do. And I think working with the same people over so many years, we've had that common ground, common understanding that this is how we work. And it doesn't mean that they work the same way with other people or in their own work, but when we're together in the studio for one of these projects, that's the way we explore and we devise. And also there's a sense of trust. There's a sense of strong trust and thus allowed vulnerability in a way. Like I don't need to pretend anything with them. I can be really vulnerable. I can be really like, yeah, that didn't work. I'm really sorry. Thanks for trying. And I love not knowing where I go. I love that.
Which I guess makes the work as well very unique because how otherwise can you go somewhere new if you're not allowing that? So the work that I saw in the bushes, and the dancers were also so amazing. I was very blown away. It comes from, you said that you read this book, The Accidental Species. How did you pick that book?
So it's very interesting because I realize as well that I maybe say too much about the work. For example, some people wrote about the work and said, oh, it's about that, when actually it's not about human exceptionalism. It's not about evolution theory.
But it kind of inspired the work in a way.
It's inspired, it's fed the work, but it's more, it was something to sort of like go back to. But if anything, any of my work is about the human nature. How bizarre we are. How we're so weird. We are these creatures that think we know everything and we think we rule the world. But you know, ants were there before us. And yeah, I just think we are so grotesque. And my work is really about that. But it's also about the love for these grotesque creatures because we are so moving in a way. We are terrible. We're horrible. We kill each other for nothing. We're atrocious creatures as well. But we're also lovable creatures. I'm very interested in instincts. What is instinct? What's the difference between instinct and intuition? How do we connect to instinct as dancers, as creators, as human beings living our lives?
Because one of the questions in the podcast that you ask is instinct or impulse, right?
Yeah. Instinct or intuition, yeah.
Oh yeah, instinct. So which one would you pick?
Instincts.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm really interested as well in midwifery, and so many wonderful midwives wrote about letting go of your thinking brain when you give birth. And a very famous one, May Gaskin, said, let your monkey do it. Just surrender to your primate self. And I wonder how, as dancers, we could apply that to shut off the thinking brain. So my practice is really about not shutting it off, because you never shut it off. When you're on stage, you need to be in the right spot for the lights. You need to count 3 before you go. You never shut that off, but you can connect to a deeper sense of your animality / instinct / spontaneity. And we work a lot on that as well. Like, how do we perform the work? Because the work is no difference from the way it's performed. The way the work is on stage is fully what the work is. So we've worked on that a lot as well. Sorry, I've lost myself.
Instinct.
Oh, yeah. And so I was reading a lot of books around instinct. What does that mean? Do we have any? Is that even something? And I came across that book because I was looking at evolution theory, and I read that book and I just loved it. It's really funny. It's putting back everything in perspective. It laughs at ourselves a little bit, thinking that we're the pinnacle of evolution when actually we haven't invented anything. You know, gorillas have technology as well. Dolphins might have a religion. We don't know anything. We do not know, yet we think we know everything.
Yeah.
One of the quote from the book is, I think, there's nothing exceptional about being human any more than there is anything special about being a guinea pig or a geranium. And I'm like, yeah, it's true. It's very much linked to Buddhism, I guess. Like, you're no more than a flower. A flower is as beautiful and gorgeous and important as yourself as a human. Anyway, so I guess this book was just feeding or helping me find another angle to look at human nature. And that was you think you're so good and you think you're so incredible when actually you're so absurd and grotesque and there's no sense. Nothing makes sense. And I think that's why as well the piece sort of like, you know, one scene leads to another and there might be no link.
Yes.
I think there was also a sense or a need of enjoyment. I wanted to have fun creating that piece. I wanted to step in the studio and just laugh and just spit things out and find the meaning later. And maybe there are no meaning. Maybe the piece has no meaning and it doesn't make any sense. But I guess that's what the world is.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So how do you find reading critics about your work? Or same, because there was a Q&A at the end of the piece, which I was thinking it must be such a tricky exercise to try to put words onto something that's not supposed to be said with words.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. I think I'm also realizing years after years that after a show, I'm so full of adrenaline that I find it really hard to then sort of like bring myself down from that ride and be articulated. And I think I just forget a lot of things and I feel like I'm completely like scattered in my head because I'm buzzing with what just happened. I always forget. I forgot the questions. I forgot the things that were asked. I forgot the things I said. I cannot remember anything about that evening and that conversation. But yes, for me, a piece shouldn't be explained. You should not need an explanation for a work. It should touch you or not. And if it doesn't touch you, it's okay. You know, a work doesn't need to comply with an objective. Sometimes I read critics and they're like, oh yeah, they wanted to show this, they didn't succeed in showing this. Well, they showed something. You might not see that, but they showed something. The practitioner, the creator, the artist did something. Maybe you did not understand it with your brain, but I don't think dance should be understood with brains. I think dance should be understood with your whole body. It's a whole experience to watch a dance show. But that's my take on it.
Of course.
Again, instinct and the whole sort of like, it should pass through your guts first. And sometimes you hate something because it makes you feel uncomfortable, and that's fine. That's also, I think, a success for the artist, because you don't need to like everything. We don't need to make work that's liked by everyone, actually by no one. We don't, you know? So I guess my relationship with critics, sometimes I get annoyed because I find it's a little bit like box ticking. You check the text and you check whether you saw what the program note said, which to me doesn't make any sense and says shallow and on the surface of things. I think I'm interested in people who will have their own reading of the piece, not mine. I don't want them to check what I thought I did and whether I did it right or not. I want them to tell me what they felt and what they saw and how they felt things. So sometimes I get really annoyed because I'm thinking I'm not interested in that kind of
course,
conversation. Sometimes I get really moved because people will have seen things that I will have not thought about, and they give me a whole new perspective on the work, and that really opened my eyes. But also, you know, even the critics that kind of like annoy me, they're great food for thought as well. Yeah, it depends.
And how do you feel when you see the piece that you've made on stage?
I love it. I mean, I have this tendency of killing the darlings. Like, we make a piece, we tour it, and then I'm done with it. So it will live for maybe 2-3 years, but then I want to move on. I don't want to see it anymore. I don't want to share it anymore, which is crazy. And it's not the best business model. But, but yeah, at some point I'm just like, okay, move on, next thing.
And do you feel like you need a break to move on, or do you need to straight away start?
No, usually I need to move on because there's already something else I want to explore.
Oh, wow.
But when we make the work and when this work is living, I love it. I love it. But also because I love the people I work with. I love watching them on stage. I love seeing what they make of the work. I just love them as artists and dancers and people, and I just enjoy watching them. And because they make me laugh and they make me cry. And so I do have a very strong positive relationship with the work when the work is touring. Once it's done, I kind of have this sweet memory of the work, but it's in the past, and yeah.
And you wrote a book.
Yes.
I haven't been able to read it because you need to order it from France and blah, blah, blah. But why?
So the National Center for Literature commissioned me to write a book about dance. They had just started this series around dance, and they asked me to write one. It was quite an exercise to write about dance because, as we said, words kind of like don't really serve. I mean, they do serve dance, but dance is really the body. So it was a great exercise. It was an exercise I did before I had given a lot of thoughts and reflections around my practice. So if I had to write it again today, I would, of course, say so many other things. But it was a very interesting challenge.
And do you feel like studying that BA as well in, was it History of Art?
Yeah, History of Art. I did
And
this, there was a
literature.
double, yeah.
That maybe helped, you know?
Yes, totally.
Because you've studied text and...
Yeah, I think I've always had something with words. I've always loved reading, writing. I've written a lot. But writing about dance really is really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did it. It's a short book. But I also added some texts I wrote about different creative processes from, I think it started in 2016 probably. So it was quite interesting to reread what I had written years ago. But I was in the middle of creating my previous piece, Starving Dingoes, or in the middle of touring it. I cannot remember exactly when the text came out, but it's interesting now to look back at this book because it happened in a very specific time, both in my career and personal life. So, yeah.
And the podcast.
Yes. I think this came because I was very interested in the notion of failure. And I was working with someone at the time who considered something a failure when I saw it as a success. And I thought, whoa, it's crazy how someone's take on a situation can completely fuck your own take on that same situation. And I feel like as makers, you're constantly facing failures. You're constantly facing things that don't work. You're constantly facing people who will say no to you. You're constantly facing the terrible feeling of begging, you know, and I thought, wow, we're never talking about that. We're never embracing that. We're never even celebrating that, you know?
Because what we are sharing is the successes and when
Exactly.
something is accepted and
Yes.
when... Yeah.
And it's okay. It's okay that one piece didn't work. It's fine. It's just an exploration of a practice at a specific time in your life. And also, maybe that's why I cannot answer the question, are you an artist? Because probably to make an artist, you need a lifetime to become the complete artist you are, you will be. You need a lifetime to understand your own practice, your art, your take on things. So it was, it came out from this need to share shittiest experiences, really. Bad reviews, bad pieces, terrible collaborations, constant refusals to fundings and, you know, anything. But also to celebrate that because, wow, we're so strong, we're so resilient. And yet I'm also very fed up with that word, resilient. Yeah, it came from that, and it came from wanting to exchange with the people I love and I admire.
And do you have a worst memory
Of dance?
of dance, collaboration, creating? And
I think worst memory as a dancer would be, I guess I have two. I have a funny one and a more serious one. Someone who was very violent and brutal in their words and in the way they were treating us as dancers. They were shouting at us constantly. They were just like calling us words and telling us we were so bad and so shit. And that was at the very beginning of my career.
oh, wow.
That was horrible. That was like old-fashioned shit.
Yeah.
That was bad. But we were a good team, and I think now when I see people who were in that same group at the time, we go back to that story and we're like, wow, how fucked up that was. But again, it's what you make with these worst memories and what you make with these horrible people who are probably very much suffering. And then a funnier one is I was on stage. I had just gotten this incredible job in Germany for 2 years. And my first mission as a dancer was to learn a piece that had been performed the year before. So I had to learn it in 3 days.
Oh my God.
I'm a very slow learner.
Me too.
So
I can feel the anxiety already.
And so I was learning, I was nervous, but everyone was helping me. And there was this beautiful, incredible set with this huge kind of like, it was curved, so you would come from above and you would slide as a huge slide, and you would come down on stage. And I was already very nervous with the height, and I had to slide and find the way to slide. And the material of the floor was very sticky. So I was like, please, can I have socks? Because it's too sticky. I just don't feel comfortable on the floor. So they gave me these socks. And in the middle of the show, the sock was coming off. And because it was a sock that would come above the knee, suddenly the sock was like that. And I had a wig on and I was dancing and the sock was coming off. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing now? And I had to sort of like look like everything was normal. Yeah, it was quite something very funny, but also very like, oh my God, what situation did you put yourself in?
Yeah, that's when you realize how absurd life is, I think.
Yes.
It's when things like that happen and you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah, so, yeah.
You started mentoring.
Yes.
How do you find that?
I love it. It's something I had not thought about until someone wrote me years ago. And I thought, yes, I would be honored to mentor, to support, to help. And as I was doing it with that person, a few more people came to find me and
Oh, wow.
ask. And I just feel very honored and very happy that they trust me to be a part of their process, whether it's a creative process or more of a professional development process.
So how does that happen? Is it like they're in the middle of creating the piece and they call you to have a look at the rehearsals, or?
It very depends and it varies. Some people will have an idea for a piece, so they want to talk about the idea. They want me to read the dossier. They want me to feedback. They want me to almost have a conceptual advices at the very, very beginning of a project once they have written about it. They haven't even been in the studio yet. So
Okay.
sometimes it's at this stage. Sometimes they've started creating the work already and they need me to watch videos. They need me to talk with them through either collaborating with their collaborators, very different things. Some people I just Zoom. We never meet in the studio. Some other people that will need me to be in the studio with them to help with movement, to help with leading improvisations, to help even sometimes choreograph your section or direct your section, to movement direct sections. Some other people will need me more as a maybe dramaturge. So it really depends what the people need. But I love helping them dissecting their project, whether it's on a producing level or on a creating level or on a even team working kind of like, there's something that I wish I had the time to do one day. But I think management and team management is so interesting.
Yes.
Human relationships are just incredible.
Dynamics
Yes.
and everything.
So, yeah. So it really depends.
Do you have inspirations or recommendations?
As in the dance world or?
Yeah, anything. Can be a dance work, can be a book, a film.
I think a choreographer that I've always loved, and it's really funny when people ask me what's my favorite work, it's always a work by this choreographer. It's Alain Patel from Les C de l'Abbé. every time I see one of his work, it just goes through my whole body and my soul, and I just love his work so much. The way the body moves, the music he uses, the way the work is performed. And my favorite piece of all time by him is avant, marche. It was at Sadler's years ago, and I was taken by this piece. And there's not so much dance in it. Bodies are moving. It's also like, what is dance? What is art? What is all that? Something that moves you, something that you can relate because it's very close to your understanding of the world. But that piece really, wow, did something. So I'd say any of his work. And then there's a quote that I love that it's in our living room because I just love it. And it's a little bit like Nav because it's from Pablo Picasso, so it's very famous. And now we know that the man hasn't been the best with women. He said, the enemy of creativity is good taste. L'ennemi de la créativité est le bon goût.
That's so true.
So, yeah. I'm always trying to think, it's not even something I think about, when I'm in the studio, whether it's good or bad taste, but because I'm so interested in the raw, in the real, in the ugly,
And do you feel that because now we live in such days of social medias and appearances and looking good, and have you seen that maybe change the way dancers move, or?
Well, I think when you start looking at art, there's always an interest for the ugly, for the real, for the death, for the blood, for the fluids. You look at Dave Saint-Pierre's work, or an artist I'm working with at the moment, William Cardoso, who's a super interesting artist. He's working a lot with body fluid and an aesthetic that can make you feel uncomfortable because it doesn't go towards the pretty. It doesn't go towards the pretty visuals. It doesn't go towards the pretty bodies, dancing, moving bodies, but it's very real. And I think this is really changing in terms of like social media. I see a lot more, right? I'm getting closer to 40 and I have children. So I see now a lot of people who are like, wrinkles and gray hair, but embracing that, and the postpartum bodies, and everyone now know that we bleed after we've given birth, and the period cycle, and the fact that we bleed once a month. And I don't know, I feel like in general, we are taking more space with our real bloody bodies. And I think that has an impact on dancers, and the arts in general. So I think we're, maybe unveiling or getting rid of a lot of taboos in health that will echo in the way we see the world and thus present the world through art, I think.
Random questions of the end. What makes you laugh?
Oh my God, everything. I'm quite a good audience. I laugh at I love laughing. Someone laughing in the street. Good jokes, any jokes, bad jokes. Children makes me laugh.
How old are your children?
7, 4, and 1.
Oh,
they
wow.
make me laugh a lot. My 1-year-old walking with his little. I think laughing is an act of resistance in this very dark world. So yeah, it's actually the theme of my next piece.
Laughing?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's very interesting that you ask about that.
Do you believe in talent?
No, I believe in hard work. I believe in instinct. I believe in obsessions. I believe in integrity. Refining your practice through all this, through integrity and obsession and trust for yourself and for what will come out of your research, but also, no, I don't believe in talent. I think I believe in individual voices, in specific individual voices. in maybe intelligence, different types of intelligence.
If you could have dinner with anyone, alive or dead, who would you choose?
My family, my children, my husband, Alain Patel might be part of the table. So,
Alain Patel speaking to your children. Conversation between both.
yeah.
If you could live a parallel life, what would you do with this life?
I think I would want to be a midwife.
Mm.
I would want to work with pregnant people and babies and supporting this incredible rite of passage if, one chooses to do so. But yeah, I think I would be there in the blood and the fluid with my hands. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Anything you want to add or
Thank
share?
you for having me. Yeah, thank you so much.